present there. 3 of them stood up. Third, Anas didn't stand, and Amir al-Mu'mineen cursed him. Okay. What I'm trying to get to from this is that the people had not heard this very important incident. This isn't the only one. And there aren't books yet. In fact, whoever had any writings, the ahadith of the Prophet were destroyed. People who had writings of those ahadith. It was a political move, but they were destroyed. So they haven't been established, right? Muawiyah takes advantage of this now that he has gotten the Ahlul Bayt out of the way in his view, in his understanding. He is ruling. He wants to change the course of Islam altogether. He still is capable of making some of those changes in the form of fabricating hadith. Muawiyah spent a lot of time fabricating hadith through different means, different people, different scholars, different Sahabi of the Prophet. He would pay them to fabricate hadith. There's one instance that I will tell you about. There's plenty of them. This is just an example for us to get an idea. Samura ibn Jundab is one of the companions of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Companion in the sense that he saw the Prophet. Otherwise, he was not a very good companion at all. There's a story, a very well-known hadith known as the hadith of La Darara wa La Dirar. One of the Ansar had a house. Samura was a muhajir. He bought this date tree in the yard of the front or backyard or of this Ansari, this individual who is actually from Medina. This one date tree. Samura would come and enter the house without permission, without knocking, and the Ansari is obviously upset at that. He says, my wife, my daughters are here. No, at least it's yours. You can come and do whatever you want to it, but if you want to come, knock, let us know. Don't just come in, barge in. He said, no, it's my tree. I want to visit anytime. I don't need to make an appointment with anyone. He kept advising him, talking to him. Nothing worked. The Ansari goes to the Holy Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, this is my situation. The Holy Prophet calls him up and says, what's the situation here? You can knock. He said, no, I don't need to make an appointment. It's mine. He said, okay, if you don't want to do that, then why don't you sell that tree to me? Sell it. Let's resolve this issue. He said, no, I don't want to. Look, the audacity. What type of companion is this? The Prophet said, sell it. Whatever the price is, I'll pay more. So I don't want to sell it. The Prophet said, I will give you this many trees. I will guarantee this many trees in paradise if you give this. I don't want to sell it. Kept insisting. He doesn't want to go by the rules. He doesn't want to listen and knock on the door. He doesn't want to do any of that. He doesn't want to sell it. After all of that, the Holy Prophet said, go and take that tree out and throw it in his face. La dharara wa la dhirara fil Islam. Okay? You can't use your rights to abuse other people's rights. You can't do that. This is a general rule in Islam. This Samura ibn Jundab is still not bad enough to do what Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan wants him to do. Muawiyah goes to him and he says, he sends someone, he doesn't go in person, he sends someone to tell him, I want you to fabricate this hadith to say that the verse of the Holy Quran that says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْغِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, which we know was revealed. And the best example of it, it was in the context of Ali ibn Abi Talib on Laylatul Mabit. Of the people, there are those who give their lives ابتغاء مرضات الله, to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I want you to say you heard the Prophet say, this is Ibn Muljam. And there's another verse in that same chapter, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يُعْجِبُكَ قَوْلُهُ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. At the end of the verse it says, those who speak, when they speak of the dunya, they amaze you, their language regarding the dunya. However, they are أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. They are very stubborn and staunch enemies. He said, I want you to fabricate a hadith saying, I heard the Prophet say, this verse is about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Why? Because you've seen, inshallah, we've all seen the hadith in Nahj al-Balagha. Amir al-Mu'mineen speaks of the dunya in a way that anyone who reads it will be amazed. He wanted this fabricated hadith, because everybody would hear these words about Ali ibn Abi Talib. He wanted to change the narrative of Amir al-Mu'mineen. These are only words, he said. وَهُوَ أَلَدُّ الْخِصَامِ. He's a munafiq. He said these, but this is how he was, so on and so forth. This isn't, look at the difference. There's a time where these Saudis spend money and they create these news channels, and they give you misinformation about what's going on inside that country, what's going on outside of that country. They feed people whatever they want. That's one thing. But to present it as Islam, again, not as an interpretation, but as a fabricated hadith. There's a hadith that says, if he would have been successful, there would have been a hadith. The Muslims from that point onwards would have religiously hated the Ahlul Bayt. Religiously. They would have religiously, they would have thought that the Prophet thought of Ali ibn Abi Talib like that. In fact, they would have thought that the Quran speaks of Ali ibn Abi Talib like this. There's a huge difference between these. This is the Islam of the Umayyads. Say salawat, please. These are only a couple of examples. There are numerous. There's a hadith, or a historic account rather, that says when one of these khulafa of the Abbasids, of the Umayyads, when he died, from the library, there were a number of animals. The books were not, the books that we have today. We have print, alhamdulillah. Paper had not been developed, so when you would write a book, it wouldn't be in the format that you see it today. It would be loads of leather, or even at the time of the Quran, it was bones that they would write it on. So you could imagine how much material is required to write a book of hadith. A number of animals had to carry the books of that scholar who had written all of those for the Khalifa, for the Umayyad Khalifa of the time. This is what the Umayyads were moving towards, completely changing what anyone knows of Islam. On top of fabricating these things, they did something else as well. And I mentioned this in the earlier nights. And that is the cruelty of the Umayyads. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan starting this. The cruelty leading or causing everyone to hush up. No one to say anything. The combination of these two would have led to Islam being changed and altered. Imam al-Hussein changed this. Imam al-Hussein changed this. How so? Part of it is what happened, that incident in history that happened in Karbala. Part of it is that. He broke the ice. This fear that everyone had and caused everyone to hush up, not to do anything. When he put himself and his family and his companions there in Karbala, he fought, he didn't give up until they were all slaughtered. That gave courage to a lot of other people. I've already talked about that part of it. People rising. Movements were started, a number of them. That's part of it. There are two parts that we haven't talked about, I want to mention tonight. The movement of Imam al-Hussein, what it did. The second thing that happened with the movement of Imam al-Hussein and the massacre of Karbala and Ashura, and the brave sacrifice of the Imam. From his perspective, it was a sacrifice. From the other side, it was a massacre. The sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein created immunity for the Imams that followed. None of the Khulafa after Yazid dared do what they did to Imam al-Hussein. To the extent that even Yazid himself, when he sent an army to Mecca, they made everything halal. You can take anything, steal, the women are halal, everything was halal. They went, the army of Yazid. One exception, the house of Ali ibn al-Hussein. He made that exception. Not only this immunity in terms of them attacking, what this did, what the sacrifice did in itself, without looking at the work of the Imams that followed, it brought a whole lot of attention from all people to the household of the Prophet. The combination of those allowed Imam Zayn al-Abidin and Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq to present Islam with the details based on the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet, which for these years had been kept away from the Ummah. In other words, briefly, the work of the Imams that followed in terms of presenting the specifics, the details of the ahkam, the details of the aqaid, the details of tafsir and so on and so forth. If you look at our ahadith, the books of hadith, you won't find too many hadith from Imam al-Hussein, unfortunately. You won't find too many hadith. You won't find too many hadith on the ahkam from Imam al-Hussein, but there's plenty of hadith from Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq, salamullah alayhima. Right? Imam al-Hussein's movement allowed for these Imams to be able to do that. As I said, two ways. One, cause the government not to feel comfortable in dealing with the Imams as they want. Give them a little bit of space to do things because of the incident of Karbala and the results of it. And secondly, it brought attention from the Ummah to the Ahlul Bayt. They started becoming central figures for everyone to look towards, contrary to what Muawiyah wanted, to turn people away from the Ahlul Bayt. Because of Karbala, everyone's attention now started going towards the Ahlul Bayt more than ever before. That allowed them to explain more and have more of an impact. This was the second way that they helped go against what Muawiyah was doing. There's a third way that the movement of Imam al-Hussein affected the evolution. This is the part that I really wanted to spend more time, but I'll try to make it very brief. Now that we have a better understanding of the context, the historic context, what Muawiyah was trying to do, the direction of Islam would have been, if it hadn't been for Imam al-Hussein and the movement of Imam al-Hussein and the sacrifice of Imam al-Hussein. What Imam al-Hussein did, besides those few points that were mentioned, he created a culture that in the future futures to come, years to come, centuries to come, millennia to come. Those who see that, they learn from it. And at any point in the future, if they try to, not in the way Muawiyah did, but in the way the Al Sauds, Saddams, Shahs of Iran, the Zionists, the global superpower, or anyone else, when they try to change Islam through giving wrong interpretations and then cracking down on anyone who dares to speak against that version that they are presenting, this is exactly what they're doing today. Imam al-Hussein, his message, his Muharrams, his commemorations will always have reminders with people, with the believers, with the followers of Imam al-Hussein, to not allow that behavior to change Islam. If you see ulama, we gave examples. Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sad, may Allah bless his soul, they were trying to get him to agree to a version of Islam that they wanted. There were other ulama that were tortured in different ways to give a fatwa in accordance to what a tyrant wants. They gave their life. They weren't willing to give one fatwa. Okay. It's not a fabricated hadith. It's not a hadith about the interpretation of the Quran. That tyrant wants to change Islam by me giving a fatwa in this direction. The words of Imam al-Hussein, hayhat minna dhillah, are heard by these ulama and the followers of these ulama, who are all the followers of Sayyid al-Shuhada. And this is what we need to continue. It is Imam al-Hussein's message that gives us the strength that when the West is trying to give us different versions of Islam that are their fabrications, that they will have the likes of Qadi Shuraih. You know, you've heard about Shuraih al-Qadi, this mal'oon in Kufa, that was used because he was considered a faqih. He was a judge during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was used on multiple occasions to mislead people. You have ulama that are afraid to lose their lives. That fear causes them to be good material for the tyrants, for the tawaghit, for the superpowers, for the Zionists, for the Al Sauds, and for the others, to get them to issue fatwas that they want, give versions of Islam that they want, be silent to allow a certain version of Islam that they want to become prevalent. There are those, unfortunately, who have studied Islam. They're not ulama in the definition of Islam, but they are ulama in the sense of they know a little bit. They know ahadith, they know the verses of the Quran. There are those who love the dunya. If you give them a little something, they will fabricate. That Samura ibn Jundab, he was promised 700,000 dirham or dinar, whichever, silver coins or gold coins. Initially he said, no, I won't do it. Muawiyah said, this idiot doesn't know what 700,000 dinars are. Go pour it in front of him and see if he'll agree or not. They went and dumped 700,000 dinars in his house. He saw it, he was like, okay, I'll do this. Now, you have people like that. But Imam al-Hussein's sacrifice that we remember and we shed tears for, and those tears are important because it purifies the heart. Ulama have sessions not once a year for Muharram. Every Thursday night, they want someone to come recite poetry, recite na'i, recite The masa'ib of Imam al-Hussein, to shed tears, to cry, to purify that heart, that memory needs to be there, so that when these people come to either bribe you or to scare you, to shut you up, when they want to present a version of Islam that they want, contrary to the teachings of the Prophet, I remember that. I said, no, I'll give my life proudly. Forget about everything else. Ruin my image all you want. Put me on the media and just slander and do whatever you want. I'll give that up. That's easy. Hussein gave the blood of his heart. I'm ready for that. This is what ulama are supposed to do. This is what Hussein taught. This is the effect of Imam al-Hussein. Today the tyrants are trying to do this. They are within the Western countries, because each part of the world, they're trying to promote a certain version. They created Wahhabi interpretation and they spread it wherever they wanted. Now within the Western countries and also in certain Muslim countries, they're trying to push for a lenient Islam. They have paid the countries of the Gulf, Muslim countries, to take out any mention of jihad and shahada from their books. They don't want the next generation of the Muslims in the region to hear about jihad. They don't want to hear about Hussein. They don't want to hear about martyrdom. They don't want their youth to hear it, because if they do, it's trouble for them in those regions. In these countries, they need to break the spirit of Islam. They are promoting a liberal version of Islam. You have whispers, the penal code of Islam has this problem or that problem. There's whispers of Islam and Muslims accepting al-ayadu billah, homosexuality, and they're really pushing hard, and they're actually either shutting people who speak about this publicly, they're shutting them down, and they're trying to use these fear-mongering tactics not to allow anyone to say this is haram, it will remain haram, there is no such a thing in Islam. I want to shut that up. Okay. They want to make sure nobody within the Muslim community says anything like that. And on the other hand, they are bombarding all of us, adults and children, from kindergarten and below. You have to hear this. This is natural. This is this. This is that. And that scholars say, okay, I don't think this is the right time to talk about this. Really, when is the right time to talk about it? Why is it not the right time to talk about it? They are bombarding us mentally with this garbage. It's not the time to talk about it. When is it? After all of us, al-ayadu billah, became homosexual Muslims? That's when you're going to start talking about it? Hussein taught us otherwise. They're not going to change Islam. They can't change Islam. They're not going to give these interpretations. We will stand. We will continue to say, this is completely off. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiped off the face of the earth an entire nation